Hey everybody, our last video ran a little bit long, so we decided to break it up into 2 videos. So please enjoy the second half of our discussion on the New York Times Hamada article, which includes all of the Batman discourse, the word-twisting discourse, I should say, some thoughts on Wonder Woman 1984, and just the future of DC in general. So let's talk about what happened with Batman. So I'm going to read again what the New York Times article said, and then we can kind of talk about how people didn't read that and then just tweeted out their own nonsense, which seems to be a lot of the problem I'm noticing. Okay, so the article said, they were talking about the concept of the multiverse and how basically they'll have, Earth 1, which includes the pre-existing Wonder Woman and Aquaman, and then Earth 2, which is where Robert Pattinson's Batman will come in. Paraphrasing that. And then it says, The Flash, a film set for release in theaters in 2022, will link the 2 universes and feature 2 Batmans, with Mr. Affleck returning as one and Michael Keaton returning as the other. So people then took that to mean that Keaton is DC's new Batman, and there's probably no hope of Ben Affleck's Batman ever existing ever again outside of the Flash movie and Zack Snyder's Justice League. Which does not necessarily make sense.
Don't believe everything you hear, son.
And the writer even then had to tweet out, I was referring to the one film that Keaton has been announced as being in, not a set of his own Batman films. If I had info on him beyond The Flash, I would have obviously put it in my article.
It is beyond exhausting.
Which made me cackle when I saw that on Twitter. Like, actually laugh out loud.
It's just exhausting that people will read and translate what they want to hear, or not hear, based on what is
clicks.
reported.
Or for likes, or for retweets, or whatever. It's just like...
And again, with all of these instances, this stuff can change on a dime.
Yeah.
Like, we have to, like, there are people who are worried about the fallout from things that are happening today, of how it's going to affect a Flash movie that's not going to happen until 2022.
Yeah.
Let's all just take a minute to speculate about the millions of things that can change between then and now.
Yes.
And that one thing that gets reported in the New York Times about whether Michael Keaton or Ben Affleck or anyone is going to continue, nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow,
and
let alone what's going to happen in 2022.
The report didn't even ever mention anything about Ben Affleck's future as Batman. Really. Like, it didn't say anything to contradict the fact that he could potentially still have that door open. So I think the way that we frame things has just gotten so warped. It's like, it's okay to be like, so does this mean that Ben Affleck's Batman is done? But like, don't present that as like a fact.
Also, it's interesting to see that like people want all of it immediately.
Right now.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a faction of people who are really campaigning really hard to get an HBO Max series for Ben's Batman to continue. Like, give me Batfleck on HBO Max. You see this on social media. So then if a report comes around and says, okay, but in the movies, moving forward, Michael Keaton's going to play Batman for a little while. And people are like, what about Ben Affleck?
If we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty.
Hold on, guys.
The 2 things are not mutually exclusive.
Right. Exactly.
He is not our enemy.
All of this is also, it's fine. Like, we can have these conversations.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be with such urgency. Like, this isn't end of the world type stuff. I will use Ben Affleck from Jay and Silent Bob when he says to the guys,
they're talking about fictional characters. Fictional characters.
Like, where everyone's getting in such an uproar when no one really knows.
And the other thing that I thought was just very ironic is the whole New York Times article is about basically the concept of that DC is really going to embrace the fact that there can be 2 of the same characters existing at once, which in the past they've been really against. So I just thought it was so ironic that people immediately took that comment to be like, no other Batman. I'm like, 2 paragraphs before, they're talking about how they're going to have multiple Batmen and potentially Bat people. Like, in this, like...
Am I getting through to you at all?
I don't know. It makes me sad, but main takeaway is I don't think anybody, and let me know your thoughts on this, I don't think this really affects anything that Ben Affleck could or could not be working on when it comes to Batman. Like, I just don't think that that's even a factor.
No, it's not a factor at all. In fact, a lot of the logic that we just applied to Cyborg as a character
Right.
and how they could move forward in the future could and should be applied to Batman as well too. Yeah. But nobody's taking those arguments and applying them to the same character because it doesn't fit whatever narrative that they want to put forward. So with all of this, I really did single out this article, this New York Times article that Walter Hamada talked about, as a turning point for all things moving forward. Because I honestly believed that it's one of the first looks into the studio's thought process with DC moving forward. And the fans can and did react to all of these things that were teased. Now, they reacted to it with a lot of fervor and urgency.
Start moving now, people. Right now.
But it shows that there are multiple paths moving forward for DC content, and you could be excited for it or not. And a lot of it depends on how much you love the Snyder's interpretation or how much you love what DC has done post Zack being removed from Justice League, which would be the Shazams, the Birds of Preys, Aquaman one.
I love Birds of Prey, and I don't get why people don't. Side bust.
I liked Birds of Prey a lot when I saw it in theaters, and I've tried to revisit it on HBO Max, and it didn't play as well.
I haven't seen it since I saw it in theaters.
Put it back on HBO Max and see how it plays. It's not a bad film. It's just, it does feel like less.
Yeah.
It feels like less.
No one gives two shits who we are beyond that.
But I think some of this also is stemming from the fact that, and you and I haven't talked about Wonder Woman 1984 since. You didn't really like it.
No.
You can say that. That's okay.
You're not the only one who has suffered.
I thought the critical reaction to Wonder Woman 1984 was strong initially. Then as more people started to see it, critics also, they started to pan it. But honestly, I thought the fan reaction to it was far more negative than I anticipated it to be. And talk about what you watched it 3 times and you still don't like it.
Yeah, well, I don't know. So I watched it Christmas afternoon when I had a bunch of sugar, and so I was very just like not in the mood to do anything, which maybe was the wrong time to watch it. But I felt like I just kept waiting for something to happen or something to make me feel like really connected and hopeful and passionate about this character. Like I think about the way that the original Wonder Woman made me feel just as a watcher. I was like, oh my God, I feel so inspired. This is incredible. This is why we go to the movies, right? And this is why superhero movies are so incredible, because they make you feel kind of like larger than life and it like inspires something in you. And I just didn't get that at all.
Well, cheers to us. Wishing us better luck, I guess.
I understand that it was a different movie and it was trying to really lean into the like, it's in the 80s and we're gonna do camp and it's gonna be fun. And I think Pedro Pascal was great. I loved him. And honestly, I think without him, it would have been a complete disaster.
Mayo team.
And look, yeah. I don't hate the movie. I gave it a 3 out of 5, but it didn't really like do anything for me. And I guess it's maybe a little bit unfair because I think there's a weird thing happening where like, especially with female superhero movies, like Captain Marvel was kind of meh, Wonder Woman was great. There's not a lot of examples in the marketplace. So I feel like sometimes people have a tendency to be like, oh, well, I don't want to hurt the progress of women superhero movies, so I'm going to be a little bit nicer to it. And I feel the opposite, where I'm like, no, we have to hold this to like the high standard that we hold everything else to. Otherwise, like, what's the point?
Right.
So there's like that whole element of it too, where I felt like it was a little bit hard. That's why I watched it so many times. I was like, I don't know if I'm just being like overly critical coming at it from that lens, but I think you even mentioned this too in your review, like there was not really that much action. And I know that the whole thing was Wonder Woman kind of losing her powers, but it's like, I don't want to see that in like what is the 3rd major female superhero film. I don't want to see the main hero weak for 3/4 of the film. So
sure,
I don't know.
It's a big problem I have with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Is that, in the middle of that, he loses his powers. And my translation of it, which gets ripped apart by everybody, is that he loses them because he's sad. Like, he just gets sad and his powers go away. And I'm all like, I don't want Spider-Man to do that. I understand psychologically it works a little bit better than I dismiss it as. But it's a little, I get what you're saying.
And like, if we had seen, like, if this were like 50 years from now and we've had like 8,000 different Wonder Woman interpretations, like, sure, give me something different. Show me her losing her powers. But I just don't feel like we're there yet. I don't know. Yeah. Again, maybe I'm being too critical because I'm coming at it from like, I want it to be so good that like, because it didn't hit my standard, I'm going to be like overly critical about it.
Life is good. but it can be better.
Sure.
I don't fault anyone who likes it. If it brings you joy, great, but it doesn't bring me joy.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And I do think a lot of this fallout, from Hamada getting the green light and being on for 2023 is people looking at the movies like Shazam, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 1984 and saying, oh, is this what we're going to get as DC fans moving forward?
Jeff Johns was involved in all of those, and he's not going to be, maybe, we don't know.
He's honestly this shadowy figure now behind the scenes. Like no one knows how much involvement he has.
Yeah.
But his name is still showing up as executive producer. He collaborated on screenplays. I don't know. I think they're trying to transition away and get some other people involved. But for faulting Hamada for those movies means you're faulting him for Joker as well too, which crossed $1 billion and reinvigorated that character to a certain extent by introducing him to R-rated material and won Joaquin Phoenix an Oscar. So I think you have to take good with bad. But we're judging it from the film side. Is this seedy underbelly about what happened behind the scenes on these sets that I think people are getting really upset about that we don't know details about. And I kind of wonder, I don't know if that stuff is ever going to come out, Hannah. I'm not quite sure if that's ever going to get revealed.
Probably not to the extent that we'd like it to be.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It doesn't make business sense for them to do that. I mean, how does that help Warner Brothers? It doesn't.
No. And listen, as somebody who worked on that book, on the Snyder Cut book, I can tell you that I ran into a number of people who just were like, I can't talk about it.
Like, don't ask, don't tell.
On the record. Yeah, 100%. There are people who have come out to me, in direct messages and email chats that have been like, look, there's people who have it coming, from a karma standpoint, but I can't be the one to do it.
And that's why I think what's overlooked a lot about what Ray Fisher's doing is he just jeopardized his future income. Everybody's a human being. Ray Fisher's a human being, Jeff Johns is a human, everybody needs a paycheck. Ray Fisher was I don't care, which I think is very admirable because that's terrifying.
Big time.
And yes, it is. And that's why I have pointed out a couple of times that I don't think the other members of the league are doing enough to stand up for him. And let's point out just really quickly, yes, Jason Momoa has done the strongest, I think, with his Instagram post that was this shit has to stop.
He's very candid, yeah.
he has said bad things happen to us. But when Gal came out with her quote during the Wonder Woman press, she was like, I'm really happy for Ray to speak his truths, which is a safe thing to say. And then she said, I also had issues with Joss, but she said, I brought them up in the moment and the executives took care of them in the moment. And she wasn't shooting the reshoots with the boys, she said. So that opened up a Pandora's box for me because I thought well, how come her concerns were addressed immediately, but Ray's weren't? How different were her concerns versus Ray's? And you say he by saying this, he's jeopardizing future work and earnings and all these things from a business side because he wants to see the right thing done. But when you look across the rest of the members of the league, they all have their next DC projects on the calendar.
Which is probably why they're not, I mean, I don't want to assume, but if I had to speculate, it's kind of well, I don't know that if I were Jason Momoa, I'd necessarily say well, do I want to give up my future career or let this play out and help a little bit, but I'm not going to be the face of this thing, which has unfortunately put Ray Fisher in a very tough situation.
It really did. And so anytime you hear even whispers of, and they were louder than whispers, they're tweets, from people who claim that they're scoopers who break stories. You hear recast, and then you think oh boy, is that going to be the new reality sort of
but
thing?
I hope that I hope it's not. And I also hope that people like Jason Momoa and potentially Ben Affleck and anyone else who potentially might be involved in the future of DC films and or television will at least from the inside try to kind of do the work that Ray is doing on the outside. I hope.
Yes, I think so. And I think that's very similar to what Zack was doing on the inside. While the movement was fighting so hard to get the Snyder Cut released on the outside, there was a front-facing campaign to push and to raise awareness for it. But if Zack wasn't taking a ton of meetings and talking to the people who are in the decision-making roles to say, like, look how much these people are doing, you know, pay attention to what they're doing. Let us finish this move. The two had to sort of work in tandem. So maybe Ray is the face-fronting push for accountability. And maybe there are other conversations that are taking place behind the scenes that we don't know about where, you know, people are saying, hey, things have to change with the way things are handled here. But then you hear, you know, that Walter Hamada gets an extension. I can understand why DC fans who feel like they're fighting for this accountability see that and they're just like, damn, what are we doing?
It's discouraging, for sure.
What are we doing? It can be very discouraging, yes.
So much bitterness.
Well, let's not leave it on that note.
No,
I'm sure after we record this video, there's going to be about 8 more things that happen in this Hamada article saga. So we apologize if this seems a little bit outdated by the time you're watching it on YouTube, but we did our best. And I think just to go back to kind of the main takeaways, for me, I think let's find hope in the fact that Ben Affleck still might have a future as Batman. Zack Snyder's Justice League still could have a future on HBO Max, potentially. The Snyderverse could expand. And it's coming, you're completely correct.
I would like to just take 1 second to briefly remind people that, like, the goal was, as this fan base, the initial goal was to get the Snyder Cut released. And no one is going to take that away from you guys. Like, you've succeeded in that mission. And I totally understand that everyone's like, right, but what next?
Yeah.
But what if what next isn't what's next? You know, what if what's next is just,
or like,
hey,
let's
we gave you the
take a
Snyder
second
Cut.
to enjoy it. Like,
yes,
it's gonna be here in like 3 months. That's incredible.
And then, like, I've even seen some people be like, well, if he doesn't get to continue his vision, it's a failure. It's not a failure, you know? Like, please don't let the uncertainty of what could happen detract from what
There's going to be a
happen.
4-hour Justice League movie. Like, if you can tell, like, your like child self that in the future you were going to be able to watch a 4-hour Justice League cut that like did justice, to the characters, like, you'd be ecstatic.
Yes. So please celebrate that before you get too worked up about what may or may not come next.
Yes. And as always, we will continue to keep you updated on what may or may not happen next. But for now, just take a little bit of a rest, I think.
And while you're resting, hit like and subscribe on our videos because we really appreciate when you guys come and watch our talks about all things Snyder Cut related. And hopefully next time when we get together, Hannah, we will have a hard and fast release date.
Yes.
For a movie that are we gonna do like a watch party? We should do like a watch party or
Don't be like DC. Don't promise things that we don't know.
All right,
but yes,
fair.
we will have to have a meeting where we talk about what we're gonna do.
Sounds like a good idea.